Welcome to the show. Glad to have you guys here. Today is the 21st, Wednesday the 21st of February 2024. Thank you for tuning in. Last night, that's the coldest night of the winter for me right here. And it doesn't get much colder than what it got last night here in Nova Scotia. I recorded on my thermometer 10 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit last night. It lasted for about 6 hours. And I'm going to tell you, a little bit of a job getting my house warm this morning. I got to tell you, more than usual, because the cold makes its way in during the night, Anyway, that was a cold night. By gosh, I haven't seen a night like that in quite a while. But this is this weather phenomenon I've been telling you guys about. It's the polar vortex that's causing it. Let's take a look at what's happening in the world today. Now, I'm following this story very carefully. It's Chicago Ray and his trucker boycott in New York. And it says, "No one's got to me," he says. "I ain't scared of bleep bleep." New York trucker boycott leader Chicago Ray steps down. He stepped down. It says the trucker who ignited the righteous anger of his fellow truckers and of millions of other Americans has stepped down from the boycott leadership. And they're asking the question, does it mean the end of the trucker boycott in New York? We're going to have to wait and see what happens with this situation, but I'll read a few of the highlights. He says, "You can almost see and hear those threats when Chicago Ray posted, 'I took that video down from Friday because it went viral and my grandson seen it on TikTok.'" Another highlight here of the article, it says, "I'm not leading, nor have I encouraged, or am I encouraging anyone to do anything other than what they were doing prior to the ruling on Friday in New York City." And then he says, "No one got to me. I heard what drivers are saying, and I hear some of that today, and I ain't scared of bleep bleep." He says, "I grew up in Chicago. I stand with Trump 100%, he says. It says the boycott is not dead yet, here, according to the article. I just wonder if this thing could have got off the ground or not, or whether it will get off the ground or not. I'm just not exactly sure. So I'm sitting there watching, waiting to see what happens with it. Now, in other news, the Polish farmers are blocking Ukrainian border in a grain import protest. Now, you guys don't know about Ukraine. They produce a tremendous amount of the world's grain. It says farmers have interrupted transport of Ukrainian produce entering Poland, claiming unfair competition from cheaper goods. Meanwhile, tractors block city streets and major highways across the country. So again, another farmer protest. Yeah, know something about the farmers? The tractors they prefer, they really like those John Deere tractors. Look at all the green tractors. It is the same way with the protest in the United Kingdom and in parts of Europe there a week or two. Well, I think it's still ongoing. Green is a specific. It seems like farmers around the world, doesn't matter what country you're in, tractors are generally green, and they're generally, I think they're mostly John Deere, aren't they? The EU approves new sanctions against Russia over the Ukraine war. What is that? Son of a gun, eh? I mean, how can they impose new sanctions? I thought they sanctioned them right up to the right as high as it could go, I thought. There's more? They can do more? I thought they did everything that they could do sanctions-wise. That's what I thought. I mean, I guess I was wrong. I guess they can have more even. So it says they're going to have more sanctions. New sanctions. What weren't they sanctioning? I thought they were sanctioning everything. That's what I thought. I mean, am I mistaken on that? We got other stories going on here. Again, back to Trump. talking about Trump. Letitia James says she will seize Trump's assets if he doesn't pay the $355 million fraud fine. Well, from what I understand, I think it was $87,000 a day they're adding on top of it, I guess for interest. I don't know. Every day he doesn't pay this, I guess they're adding on another big chunk of money each day. And think about how much money he'll make as president. He makes roughly the presidential salary is $400,000 a year. Okay? So these fines he's incurred in the last week should be roughly over 1,000 years of presidential salary. So it's going to take him 1,000 years, if working as president, to pay off this. And if he did get to be president, he's facing a country that's totally divided. I know why in the past people have fought so hard to be president of the United States. But I can see that the country's deteriorating to a point where the enticement to take that job might be diminished somewhat. Let's just put it that way. As the country turns into... It's going to be like when Nero was fiddling while Rome burned. You know, that's basically what I'm getting at here. You know, I mean... And I guess at a certain point you'd have to be... It's more, in other words, I'm saying is maybe there's a point coming at some point in the future, not too distant down the pike from here, where it's going to be not such a desirable thing, you know, especially if the country gets into too much chaos. Iran says that Israel is behind the attacks on the gas pipelines. 2 explosions on key south and north gas pipelines network last week disrupted supplies in several Iranian provinces. It says Iran has accused Israel of being behind 2 attacks last week on gas pipelines that disrupted supplies in several provinces, further raising tensions between the regional arch-enemies amid the war in Gaza. Says the explosions of the country's gas lines was the work of Israel, Oil Minister Javad Owie said on Wednesday after a cabinet meeting. 2 explosions hit Iran's leading north and south gas pipeline network on February 14th. They are initially described by Owie as terrorists or sabotage, without naming who was behind the attacks. The enemy intended to disturb the gas service in the province and put people's gas distribution at risk, said news agency IRNA, reporting, quoting OWJI, who did not provide evidence to support his claim. Israel has not acknowledged carrying out the attacks, but it also says here that they rarely claim espionage missions abroad. It says the blast hit natural gas pipelines from Iran's west. Well, there's the pipelines. Picture of the pipelines. Now the Houthis. And here's a picture right here. Now we're talking about the Houthis in the Red Sea right now. And here's a picture right now here of these torpedoes that they got. These submarines. They're called drone subs. The Houthi militants are deploying these drone subs. And they used to call them torpedoes. Now they call them drone subs. Maybe it's because they got a more sophisticated guidance system. Like a drone. You know, I guess maybe they can be steered or something underneath the water. It says, since the Houthis rebels' actions began attacking the Red Sea shipping lanes last fall, U.S. forces have encountered and engaged in a wide variety of anti-ship weaponry in and around Yemen. And I guess this is new. They've targeted another tanker They've attacked a crude oil tanker in the Red Sea, and also they've got these new things, these new toys to play with, so that they can attack a ship from multiple angles simultaneously. They can attack it from the air, and they can attack it from underneath the water. I suppose their thinking is, if they overwhelm the ship's defenses, if they have more than one thing coming in at the same time, maybe on the surface of the water, an attack boat, maybe from the air, a missile coming at the ship, and at the same time, maybe some sort of underwater drone attacking the ship from the bottom side. And I guess their thinking is, if they run all three of these or four of these attacks simultaneously, that the ship's defenses will have trouble. Maybe one of the attacks will get through. I think they got it in their mind that they want to take down as many ships in that region as they possibly can. So they're deploying these drones. It's becoming a very, very dangerous spot to go through. And I'm going to tell you guys what, right up front. The ships that try to go through the Red Sea, this is becoming such a hot point right now that I think that all the shipping is going to start to avoid it like a plague because of what the Houthis are doing. So this means a long trip around the southern tip of Africa. And this also means a lot of added expense to whatever you're purchasing, and you're going to see that expense start to get put on. The next time maybe 3 months from now, you go on Amazon, it'll say there's delays in shipping, and it'll also, the shipping costs will probably be double what they are now. You're going to see this, and this is going to reflect in inflation. Silver price today. Silver took a dipsy-doodle down. It's down 22 cents at $22.74 right now as we speak. Why that looks like such a big candle down, that green candle, is because it's in such a narrow trading range right now. So the charts are up close because of the narrow trading range it was in for the last number of days. It's not as big a move down as it looks on the charts, but it's only 20. Well, right now it's 18 cents, so it must have come up a couple cents. So it's not a real huge move downwards, but it is a little bit of a dip down in price. $22.78. Gold price today. Gold is up 20 cents at $20.24. $20.24.20 today. Now, cryptocurrency is, Bitcoin made it up to like 52,500 or something like that in the past 24 hours. And now it's went down to 51,305. So it's down just a little bit from its high. But it's still holding pretty good, up over 50,000. Ethereum is at 29,000. No, 29. All you guys out there own Ethereum right now just got excited when I said 29,000. Probably just jumping for joy. No, it's 2,922 for Ethereum. Dow Jones Industrial Average today is down 89 points at 38,471 on the Dow. It really does look to me like it's peaking. There. Looks like it's made like a triple top over the since 2020. It's making a triple top. Three ring circus. But I still hold by that. I think that we're going to get a dip that's almost indistinguishable from what happened in 2020 when it dropped from like 29,500 all the way down to oh heck, it was a big drop. And then the Fed stepped in with all of their money printing schemes and ran it all the way up here to like 36,000. So you see this big mountainous bull market right here? I think we're going to repeat this entire pattern. And I think this point at the top right here is equal to this point at the top right here. And so it pretty much tells you what I think is going to happen. I think we're going to see the exact same pattern. A drop and then a bull market. And during that bull market, I think it's going to be bigger than this bull market. And I think that what we're going to see is the people that are able to find this bottom right here when we get this drop. So say it drops down to about here, someplace, I don't know, maybe even here or here. Might even drop into the 20s, might drop down to here, 29,000 or whatever. Then the Fed steps in because everything's crashing. And then we get this monster of a bull rally that takes us up like, I don't know. I mean, 50,000 Dow, I don't know. But it's going to be massive. And the people that buy in on this bottom here, maybe, I don't know, maybe 29,000, 30,000, 31,000, they buy in there. They're going to ride that thing all the way up. And they're going to do good. But finding that bottom. And of course, I'm here on my channel. And I'm probably not going to come right out and say, this is the bottom, guys. Oh, this is... No, probably, but you're probably going to hear the way I'm talking. If you interpret what I'm saying, you'll probably have a good idea when I think the bottom is. And of course, the Fed's going to give you the biggest clue of all. Is when you see them react to it falling. They'll get out there in front of it and they'll try to lower interest rates. Or, heck, they might just drop all the rates all at once. When this thing really scares them and it starts to really fall like it did at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, they'll probably just jump right in there and drop rates down to zero and go back to quantitative easing instead of quantitative tightening and start injecting money and start bailing out banks again. When they do that, you got your signal. Hey, this is time to buy into the market. Because then the market will turn and it'll go back up again. And this next bull run's going to be the big one. But during that next big bull run, by gosh, we're going to see some massive inflation. Because at that point, the inflation's completely uncontrolled at that point. It'll be completely unhinged. And the Fed, as long as this market stays up at all-time highs and stuff, and everything seems golden in the financial system, and they can keep this rhetoric going about how the economy's strong and all this kind of stuff, and jobs numbers are good and all this kind of stuff going, they're not going to drop interest rates down suddenly. You need a crash to bring that about, to get that to happen, so that they will react. Need something for them to react to. Crude oil's at 77.56. It's up 52 cents on the day for crude oil. And now what we're looking at is bonds and rates. Click off of that. I just totally assume when I see an ad like that come up, they're after money. Money, money, money. What good's money gonna do them? What good is money to you if the system cracks up? Seems to me the only thing of value if the system cracks up is going to be your food supplies. Spices would be worth a lot. Oh my gosh, salt. Just something to table salt. We go back to some sort of a collapsed system like happened to Rome. See, the Romans had all the Roman citizens in there and everything, right? And the system collapsed. But back in those days, everybody knew how to make food production, things like that. I mean, almost everybody. It was more of an agricultural world, with small farms and stuff. We didn't have the system set up like we have it today. And so when the confusion come, they were able to spare themselves and save themselves because even the little kids knew how to do things like churn butter and milk a goat and stuff like that. I mean, they just all knew, and they didn't have electricity and they didn't have cell phones and they weren't reliant upon just-in-time delivery. So they were able to save themselves. But when this system goes down, and the power grid fails, telecommunications fails, and all of our farming is done in these big conglomerates, they keep making things more and more complicated. I wouldn't be a bit surprised now if the tractors won't start unless the internet's turned on or unless the power grid's on. That wouldn't surprise me. They hook things like their milking machines. They'll hook everything on the internet. Oh, it's great. It's convenient. The farmer can be off there visiting France, with his girlfriend or whatever. And he's got himself a cell phone. He's able to look at this, dear, look. And I can push the button here. I can see how much milk I'm getting from each cow on this internet. It's all connected. He says it's all the latest technology. The milking machines, they hook them to the cow's udders, and it counts every drop of milk that comes through the tubes. Isn't this neat? Look at this. I made $34,000 this morning in my big farms back home. She's all impressed, isn't that nice? What about when the internet goes down? Then they can't get the milking machines to start because they put some sort of gearing on them, so they have to plug them into a Wi-Fi connection or something. And they can't milk. And the cows are running around in the fields, and their udders are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the cows are going, boo, boo, milk me, oh, I'm going to explode. Sorry, we can't milk. We don't even know how to milk anymore. Manually. We don't even teach them. But because they can't do it anyway. This is the kind of world we're going into now. This modern convenience world could shut down on us overnight and leave us totally in the dark with no... I mean, when I said in the dark, I mean, I'm just exactly what would happen. We would be in the dark. Our buildings nowadays, shopping centers, grocery stores, everything, they don't even put windows in them anymore. They're cement block building that the lights are not turned off inside. They're totally dark. Go to your local Walmart supercenter where you get all your groceries and stuff, right? The power grid's down. They can't... See, in the old days, they used to have these little stores out in the country and stuff, And they had windows. Power wasn't turned on. They would open up the mercantile store, and light up the potbelly stove, and they're ready for business. They had the old-fashioned cash register, and the guy come in, with generally coins or dollar bills. That's all they paid. They didn't have credit. They didn't have debit cards back then. They didn't have all this plastic fantastic. Everything worked even if the power grid was down. Not a problem. Oh, you're open today, Jim? Yeah, I'm open today. Welcome to the family country store. Pick out whatever you want. I got the cash register right here if you got the dollars in your pocket. No problem. Nowadays, you got your local Walmart supercenter, and they're all in the dark because the power's out. They got a closed sign on the front, and they ain't opening. And they're not going to be able to open. In fact, unless the internet and power grid's up and running. I don't even think the registers will work unless the internet's up and running, because they have to do inventory between stores and stuff over the internet. Is all connected. It's all... See, they've set us up by moving into this newfangled system. They've set us up for disaster, and there is no redundant systems in place to save us. After a few weeks, if something happens, anything happens, a solar spot from the sun, anything could set the whole thing off, or it just goes dead. And once it goes dead, after a couple weeks, the people start to go nuts. And then you can't get it restored again. It took 6,000 years to get this in place to where it is today. So to structure it. And if it were to all collapse, after a couple weeks, the craziness would begin, and then you were not going to be able to restore nothing. You'll have powers out for a month. You'll have people out there stealing the copper out of the power distribution centers and places like that. So if you turn it back on, it'll all just go bzzz anyway, and nothing will happen, because they'll destroy. People would destroy infrastructure if the power was out too long. The people would tear down the system to the point where so it's like Humpty Dumpty. He was his egg sitting up on top of a wall. He fell off the wall. He smashed into a million pieces. And they said all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. Well, that's the way with this system. If this system goes down for too long and the people get too rowdy, it can't be put back together again as it is now. What would happen is is if the system was down too long and everything got too rowdy like that, and everybody went crazy, basically, I'll call it going crazy, you know, because there's no law and order anymore and everything. It's Mad Max sort of a thing. The system could be restructured and brought back online and law and order restored, but it wouldn't be like it is now. There would be whole sections of the grid that they wouldn't be able to bring back. They would only be able to bring back corridor regions and things like that. And so, after it comes back on, first off, how many people would be missing from where it is now? If the power were to go out for like 4 months and it comes back on, how many people are not going to be here any longer? So, first off, you don't need so many houses and so many residences and stuff. There's not so many people. And second, they wouldn't have the power to supply all of how the system has extended itself now. They wouldn't have the power to supply. They'd only have the power to supply probably corridor regions and certain vital infrastructure and vital things to their control over the system. So it would be entirely different than it is now when it comes back. But I have no doubt they would bring it back. It might take 4 to 6 months or something like that. But it would be a disaster like you're not ready to cope with. You know? And so I think that's probably in the cards, something like that happening, because there's too many things coming at us to cause that to happen. War is one of the big ones that comes to mind. A second big one that comes to mind is the structure of the way the system all runs on liquidity or money, what we call money, Federal Reserve notes in the United States. And if something happens to those where they become worthless very quickly, it would cause such disruptions in the system that the whole system could actually fail. That's in a hyperinflationary, but in a deflationary picture could cause the same thing, either inflation or deflation. Inflation or deflation could cause that too. And law and order and the system run like what we see it run, in a way it is very... It's not indestructible, but it does tend to bounce back, like if we get a big hurricane or something like that. Provided that there's areas where the law and order is maintained outside the area where the destruction occurred. Like, a perfect example of this is Hurricane Katrina. Smashed into Louisiana, and they lost power grid, they lost law and order in a small area there in Louisiana, but all the area around, the rest of the United States was still up and running. And so they were able to rush in support to that region so that they were able to bring it all back online. But what about when it's the whole of your country that's down? That's what I'm saying. Then it's very hard for the system to recoup that loss. It works very much like the human body with an infection. Picture the loss of law and order like an infection in the human body. Well, provided that the rest of your body's good, maybe you got an infection in your foot, well, you'll probably be okay because the rest of you is not infected. But if that gets into your system and spreads through the entire system, you're a goner. They call that septicemia. You know, or blood poisoning, and you die unless you know, I mean, if it gets too far, even antibiotics wouldn't help you. And that's the way with the system. If it becomes too big where they can't manage it, too big of an areas. See, I saw a movie years ago, and it opened my eyes to this. It was called The Trigger Effect. And the movie was about several states, I guess, in the United States going down simultaneously, the power grid completely failing over maybe a several state area, and them not being able to bring it back on quick enough, and law and order falling apart, and the whole thing falling apart. And it was a scary movie. Why it was scary is because it was so real. Similar to a modern movie that was made not long ago that was on Netflix about a similar idea, you know. And I think that was made by the Obamas or whatever. It was a good movie too. But why those movies are so scary is because they could actually really happen. It's not fantasy. You watch a science fiction or something, it's all fantasy. Can't actually happen, but this can actually happen. And that's why it's really scary. Okay, so bond yields today. Sorry, I got into a bit of a rant, but there you go. That's what happens. Because this is such an issue that people are not exploring what would happen or could happen. They're just so enamored with all of this technology that we have of Facebook and TikToks and X and all this kind of stuff, that they're not paying attention to what could happen and how devastating it would be, putting all of our resources and all of our everything into such a small little tight area that could fail. Like the power grid, the telecommunications grid, and the way we pay things, payments and stuff, now are all made electronically. We're putting ourselves in a vulnerable position that we've never been before in history, and it's what could happen could be so dire. It could be a loss of 97% of the population in a worst case scenario. You know, and regrettably, but that's what could happen if the world were to experience something like World War III, or something like an X-class flare from the sun hitting us directly, and one half of the entire planet suddenly goes dead, electronically speaking. It's just like cojoined twins. You know, you got twins that are, you've all seen twins that are stuck together. What happens when one of them dies? It's not good for the other one. Just to say that. And the Earth, if one side of the Earth were to get hit with a massive flare from the sun that burns out all of our electronics on that side of the Earth, I hate to say it, but the other side of the Earth is probably done too, even though their electronics might still be running. And they say, well, Glenn, how? Well, it would have to do with radiation and stuff, because there's like, I think there's like 600 nuclear reactors around the Earth. Picture 600 Chernobyls. You know, and I mean, if you get a situation like that, like there's a lot of nuclear reactors in the United States of America, and who's going to service those things if there's total disruption of society? How's those guys going to even get into work to service the reactors and stuff? And those reactors could all melt down, leading to further problems for the rest of the globe, because that radiation does not stay in one place. It moves with the air currents around. And let's put it this way, it'd be the end of the northern hemisphere as we know it, if we were to get some sort of a flare like that from the sun. And there's more. There's meteors out there that are skimming by the... How come in the past few years we've been getting more and more of these things coming so close? One of them this year, or it was last year, but toward the end of last year, skimmed by so close it went through our atmosphere. For crying out loud. It went through our atmosphere. Just talk about almost getting hit. Anyway, guys, so government bonds today, we're looking at the U.S. 10-year at 4.3 and the U.S. 30-year at 4.46. And to finish off today with the dollar index at 104.07. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.